Hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ, and welcome this week to a little bit of a rant off, if you will allow me to. We're going to talk about the unintended consequences of changing a game throughout the years, and of course, the most popular game is Dungeons and Dragons, and make some comparisons between the OSR and Dungeons and Dragons. I guess today would be considered 5th edition. There are many different variations out there, and talk about a definition that I created. Good morning, there, Drew. Thank you very much for the invite. I appreciate it. We're going to talk about and kind of argue a little bit, have a little bit of a rant of a term I'm calling over canonizing. Actually, it's really called the Mandela effect. And we're going to get it. I'm actually going to show you different features that happened during the OSR and over time have changed, and what those unintended consequences have wrought upon the tabletop role-playing community. Fist in the air, teeth clenched, arg, and really delve into the background of some of the arguments we have that come up seasonally in Dungeons and Dragons, and one of these, well, and in role-playing game design in general. So we're going to talk about gold for experience points, and yeah, yeah, yeah. I hear you. Yeah, exactly. Oh man, good morning, everyone, or morning for my end of the world. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we could go off a little bit of thing. Um, by the way, guys, for those who are brand new and those who have, let's say, found the channel through other means, thank you very much for being here. All right, so the OSR. I'm not going to tell you what it means. Is it old school? Is it original? Does the S stand for system or school, or does the R stand for Renaissance or rules or whatever? That's up to you. But we're going to do a comparison and contrast with the old rules and the new, and I will actually show you what the real meaning of experience points is from the original 2nd edition Dungeon Master's Guide 1995, and how it's been like changed. All right, so in the OSR, it was known that gold gave you experience points. Hey, thanks, Death Angels. Be happy to see this. So, in current parlance, it's like, hey, if we kill monsters, we get experience points for them. But what was the unintended consequence of changing one from the other? Well, in the OSR, gold for experience points meant that the goal itself was to get gold. And it quickly changed because the assumption was that collecting gold was greed. It was video gaming. It was a simplistic, childish, dare I say, something that, like a gambler's high. It was only there because, well, we're just here to beat up monsters in their own home and take their stuff. But really, in the history of the game, it had a bigger factor. The purpose of collecting gold was not just for experience points, but there was a meta in the game. Hey, that's my producer, Sophie the cat, was laying in front of the computer. She does it very often, so that's just the back of her head. She says, "See now, DBJ, I wanted to know what determines what OSR is versus the drivel Watts he's dishing out his masters these days. It's only from my opinion, but I will show you evidence to prove such a thing." Pokeconnections with Professor Paquette? I'm butchering your name, but I apologize. Really want to try out gold as XP. I think is an interesting concept. I used to make a guide on turning monsters into equipment in Pathfinder First Edition. Well, I'm not going to criticize Pathfinder First Edition, but of course we know Pathfinder is just a it's a branch off of Dungeons and Dragons. So when I mention it, really I should just be calling it fantasy or fantasy D20. So gold as experience points led to another goal. So the meta, I'll dare say the generalization in the OSR was that humanity had a larger, more expansive society. And that oh, okay. you're awesome there. Feel free to promote here as you wish. So the collecting the gold wasn't the goal unto itself. Yes, getting gold gave you experience points, but in the game there was an end point in Dungeons and Dragons. That end point was between 8th to 11th level, and in first edition, second edition, that period of time was meant to retire your character. Getting the gold led to an end game. So if you were a fighter, you erected a fort, castle, defensive structure, and in many ways your character was to retire. And the gold acquisition, whether you were a cleric, you would erect a religious institution. Thieves, they weren't called rogues at the time, thieves acquired gold because they wanted to create a thieves guild. Wizards collected gold to study and erect a wizard's tower. There was an end goal to getting the gold, but also there was a sheen of a world building that this was a dark age. Dungeons & Dragons was in a dark age, and that there was a better age of humanity long before the monsters took over these lost areas. And the player characters were walking back into the greater society that was lost to history. So these monsters weren't just living innocently in their own homes. No, they had taken over places that humanity had built up, and that knowledge and that grand scope of humanity was lost, and the players were recovering it. They were going back into crypts that were once built by humanity generations before them and taking it back. So the monsters were, from the OSR point of view, the monsters were evil because they were doing the wrong thing, and humanity was correct. The monsters were, by living in these caves and castles and ruins and things out there in the wild, they had pushed humanity and crushed humanity down to a smaller point. And so the keep on the borderlands, that border didn't exist until the monsters moved in. And so there was a sense of reclaiming a lost past. And so the characters were the heroes of the story because the monsters themselves were spawned from evil doing evil things. And so, yeah, that's it. You guys are funny. Drew says, if I ever do gold for XP, I do not make it based on gold gained, but gold spent on training. Thank you very much for bringing that up, Drew. The gold that was recovered from the adventure it wasn't you doing the Scrooge McDuck and falling back on a pile of gold and swimming in it and going, I've got 10,000 gold pieces. That means it's experience points. No. That's not how it worked. You had to spend that gold to achieve your goals through training, education, improving society, building defensive ports, helping the community. You had to spend that gold, and that gold was a generalization for spreading and improving a society. So the gold was spent for goods and services. The gold was spent to improve. As the gold was spent, it would improve the economic value of where the players were at the borders of society, turning those places from muddy, street-filled small villages or frontier towns into a major metropolis, which it may have been 1,000 years hence. So uh, another unintended consequence of changing gold for XP, or XP experience points into gold, and turning it into monsters, was that adventuring in the OSR was never about killing monsters. Killing monsters came about, and because the monsters were invariably doing the wrong thing, the heroes were in the right for killing those monsters. We'll eventually talk about the ethics and morality of killing uh, children and babies in tabletop role-playing games and pregnant mommies. We'll talk about that in a later episode. But it's ostensibly humanity was good to reclaim their past. The monsters had moved in and pushed humanity out, whether it was days, hours ago, or whether it was weeks, months, generations ago. They were in the wrong. But the goal of getting the gold, how you were to retrieve those treasures, and when I say gold, I'm talking about tapestries and statuettes, gems and jewelry. It was all of those valuables returned back to society. So it wasn't you keeping a 10,000 gold piece necklace. You got the value for that 10,000 gold piece necklace if you returned it to its proper noble origins. You essentially spent the gold to achieve a goal. Your fighter was granted knighthood, let's say, by returning that bejeweled jewelry back to its owner. There was an in-world reason for spending that gold, and the expenditure of that gold may be returning to the nobility, and the nobility in return awarded you land and or a title and or dominion over a region in which you need to keep it safe from the goblinoid hordes. Also, and this is the most important part, when retrieving the gold was the most important portion of adventuring, it meant that defeating monsters wasn't the point. It meant that experiential context was important. So, in other words, the retrieving of the gold became the goal. So if you could go into a dungeon, not never put yourself in danger, avoid danger, lethal danger at all costs, negotiate, bribe, threaten, deceive, draw away, decoy, distract, sneak up upon, fool, use illusions, camouflage, convince, sway, seduce, carouse the monsters out of your way so you could retrieve said goalage. You received full experience points. It wasn't about murder killing monsters. Okay. Now I'm going to share with you a document. This is from 1995, and this is from the original. Let's see if I can get this a little bit larger so that you could actually see what I'm going to show you. And you know what? I'll go back to the original experience points here, just to give you a couple of lines of how experience points were to be awarded and how the Mandela effect has changed the way the terminology is expressed in terms of awarding experience points, and how honestly we're wrong. We today, when you hear people talk about experience points and we don't count experience points, it's milestone, which experience point milestone existed back in 1995 and even before that. But you're going to, when I read this to you, please rest assured, earmark this part of this this discussion and forward it to your friends and family that are getting experience points incorrectly in terms of the game. So First of all, let me see if you have anything else to. I'm missing something here. It moved ahead of me. Training rules. Yep. Paquette says, for the alchemy post-apocalypse game, I'm going to experiment with XP interchangeable with alchemical essence. There you go. There you go. Shai says, goody. Having to spend that gold to get the XP means you have to have a real game economy that's not totally broken like in Pool of Radiance, where you can't spend your money in the second half. Now, the purpose of expending the gold, of course, making it an in-world thing, also meant that the other half of the adventure was taking the gold and getting it out of the crypt, dungeon, caves, whatever, and getting it back home. And then once it got back home, you had to expend it, which meant that a wizard couldn't learn new spells unless the wizard found other resources to gain those spells. Adventuring allowed wizards to hyper expand their repertoire. Going into dungeons and the wilderness allowed fighters to easily expand their repertoire, but also getting back home, getting that stuff back home. It wasn't just, oh, I've got 50,000 experience points, ignore how I get it there. You needed henchmen and wagons and donkeys, and it wasn't that you just stuffed your pockets. That's why bags of holding and Hewitt's handy haversacks and portable holes were so important as you gained levels, because carrying that stuff back home was very difficult. Very difficult. That's why you could gain experience points easier at lower levels, because you could literally put it in your backpack and get back with 500, 1,000 gold pieces. When you're talking in tens of thousands, there's a physical impossibility of carrying it. So what do? Sometimes you leave the gold where it is and you build a structure around the location where that gold was at. So you didn't actually need to take it out of the dungeon. You just took the dungeon and took it over, usually old ruins or a crypt or something, and reestablish society where it's at. And as you would move through the hexes, there was this unseen aura where the players would step from hex to hex, extending the reach of humanity, turning it from lawless into civil. Paquette says, right, trying to acquire goods and services gives you an external stake in the world and allows you to act on your character's internal stakes. Pendragon still does something like this. And listen, I'm not saying this doesn't exist in other games. I'm saying the unintended consequence of changing experience points from gold to monster hunting meant that there wasn't an internal investment in the world. In order to spend the gold, that meant you'd had to have structures and resources to expend the gold with. There were NPCs in society, and like you said, an economy, a knowledge base, a training base of operations for the players to interact with. You didn't want to be a murder hobo because as a rogue, you needed a city to establish your thieves guild in. As a fighter, you wanted to have a training ground to practice with other warriors or to attract other lower experienced warriors towards you as henchmen and followers who would then help you extract the gold back out of the dungeons, and that cycle would continue. I'm fascinated to hear the explanation of how you mean how good gold equate to XP? Most grognards are all about avoiding combat. Even I am an IDM that way. Yeah. It was always about problem solving. It was never about the killing of the monster. It was, how do we get the treasure chest away from the monster that's in the room? Well, if you could distract that monster, get that monster to leave the room, and then lock the door, lock the monster behind a gate or something, even if temporarily, and then drag the chest out, you won. You got experience points. Yeah. Paquette says, explains why combat bogs down gameplay so often. Honestly, if you only fight if you have to, you're likely going to go in prepared and end it quickly anyway. That was the reason behind acquiring rumors and knowledge. So A very simple explanation of this would be players go into a territory they're unknown, and they find humanity there at a frontier town, and they start speaking with people, and they find people there that have been poisoned. There are these strange statues on the edge of town. Some people there are blind. You have others talking about rumors of, yes, my cousin went up into those darn mountains, and a week later we found my cousin turned to stone, shattered in 1,000 pieces. The reason for finding out that information was the players would go, something in here turns people to stone, and the players might go, is it a basilisk, a wizard, a Medusa? I don't know, but we're going to need to take ourselves some mirrors with us. We need to watch out. Hey, let's wrap something around our head so we can cover our eyes very easily, or something like that. You gained knowledge about the next enemy so that you didn't have to fight them. And so that knowledge base, that the rumor mill, sometimes you got red herrings, sometimes the we think it's a Medusa might be technically a basilisk or a wizard that has a spell, but it turned out to be the same thing. Yeah. So Death Angel says, yeah, well, you also have to carry that gold, and gold is cumbersome. That's why jewelry, gemstones, tapestries, paintings, statuettes, valuable books, valuable pieces of fashion, historic items that were valuable because of their historic importance was a better object to find, which lent itself to better stories than just gold. So while I'm talking about gold into XP, it was gold piece value into XP. A letter, a deed of ownership or title exchange from one nobility to another, a treaty between two nations might have a value far that outweighs the gold that's piled on the floor. But returning it back to the lands meant that your character now had an 8,000 gold piece value document that you return into society, and then you are rewarded with, or possibly rewarded with, returning a religious artifact. May have a religious institution award the cleric, and therefore the other player characters, a position in the religious order or the pantheon, or a blessing or something like that. Yeah. Building a city upon a pile of treasure you find in a crypt sounds fun as fuck. It would be so easy to convince all the necrophiles in the world to converge there, so you got them all in one place. Yeah, and then you light the pyre. I love it. Yeah, you find 10 million copper pieces. I had an adventure where there was a dwarven mine, and the players, like, people were spending the lower folk in my world used copper pieces. Middle class people used silver. Silver was really the accepted one. Gold and above was like royalty, and platinum pieces were the purview of nations. So platinum was spent to buy warships and armies and build castles, and electrum pieces were the purview of the the black market. You had those pieces. So silver was normally accepted one. But yeah, you could find 10 million copper, but how would you move it? Where would you put it, right? So let's talk about this experience, okay? So this is the beginning of the chapter of an experience. Contains instructions on determining how much to give out, and reasons why to give it out, and how difficult it is to do so. All right. And the importance of experience talks about winning and losing. It is often said that AD&D game is not a winners and losers game. This is true. The AD&D game is not a game in which one player wins at the expense of others. But at the same time, there is winning and losing based on how well the group plays and how well it achieves the goals set for it. This does not mean that individuals in the group compete against each other, or that different groups of players compete against each other. If anything, a D&D game player competes against himself. He tries to improve his role-playing and develop his character every time he plays. All right, so then we talk about too little or too much. So experience points. Now, mind you, I'm not saying you should count numbers, but this was back in the day when Milestone wasn't really an accepted practice, but people did it. So the reason about uh, how difficult it was to give out experience points was because if you gave out too little, it doesn't matter what I do, so why bother? Or if you gave out too much, it became, here we go. It doesn't matter what I do because I'm going to win attitude. So too little advancement, and it's like, it doesn't matter. I mean, no matter how hard we struggle or not struggle, we're not going to get anywhere. Or it's the opposite. Oh, great. DM's handing it out like candy. So no matter how much we fail, we get more experience. Easy, right? So that we understand that. So at the very end of this, all goals should be clear, understandable ones that players can see or decipher from clues they get during play. And this is where you guys ever heard about getting hit over the head with the clue stick? That's where this line comes from. It is like players should be given a goal, and simple goal: defeat the big bad evil guy. Okay, but other goals, minor goals amongst that, could be rescue the innocent from being sacrificed upon the altar of the evil cult, or return the crown jewels to the nobility, or close the portal that leads to the realms of evil and darkness and fire, or something like that. And then there might even be micro goals in there, in terms of non-violent goals, establishing a treaty with the lizard folk so you can get through the swamp, ensuring that the rage from the giants up in the hills stops. Now, how the characters stop the ravaging of the giants back into the human lands over and over again, that's up to the players. Maybe they make a treaty with the local farmland or something like that. So you can solve those situations. So here it says three goals are constant: fun, character survival, and improvement. All right, so we got fun, character survival, and improvement for experience points. Wait, fun? You got experience points for having fun back in 1995? That's almost 30 years. Wait, what? So fun was an important part of awarding experience. So one of the goals in AD&D is to have fun. We can all argue about what fun is, but here it is. When they do, players should be rewarded with experience points since they are making the game a good experience for all. So what's the opposite of that? If you get experience points for having fun and making it enjoyable for everyone else, what's the opposite of that? So 1995. Hey, did the player actively get involved in a game? Or were you passive? Did the player make the game fun for others at their expense? The second is not really deserving of any reward. Let me repeat that. Did the player make the game fun for others or make fun at their expense? The second is not really deserving of any reward. If you got an asshole at your table, you get nothing. This was 30 years ago. Was the player disrupting or interfering with the flow of the game? This is seldom enjoyable and tends to get on everyone's nerves quickly. And lastly, was the player argumentative or a rules lawyer? Rules lawyer, 1995. Yeah, even existed back then. This is definitely not fun for the DM, but the DM should allow a reasonable amount of disagreement. But players will want and should be allowed to argue their views from time to time. However, rules arguments properly belong outside the actual game session. All right, so you get rewarded for having fun and not making it horrible for everybody else. Take that, assholes. All right, character survival. What? You got experience points for surviving? Wait a minute, here we go. I'm gonna I'm going to enhance this. And listen, survival has gotten easier in the game. But get this. There are many ways to bring a dead character back into the game. The threat of death, while present, loses some of its sting. Players should be encouraged to try to keep their character alive instead of relying on resurrections and wishes. To this end, a small reward for making it through a game session is useful. It is a direct way of telling a player that he played well. So if we break that down, that means that using easy buttons, resurrections, healing, revivify. Come on, guys, you know all of the crutches that it takes to survive. You should be getting less, and the more and more you use it, you should be getting less and less experience for it, which is why milestoning, while not terrible, means that one set of players may say, we're saving our healing potions until we really need it. And another group is like, oh, let's take a long rest and heal up. Let's take a long rest and heal up. Let's take a long rest and heal up. Well, guess what? You really shouldn't be gaining as many, you should not be advancing as much according to 30 years ago. All right. The amount given for survival should be balanced against what happened during the adventure. The player who survived because they did nothing dangerous, or who have so many powers and hit points that they're nearly invulnerable, do not deserve as many experience points as the character who survived sure death through the use of his wits. And this is a big division between the OSR and current fantasy D20 games. Like using your wits. Did I hide, convince, cajole, distract, threaten, bribe, bargain with, negotiate, use illusions, camouflage, run away from, parlay with, got captured by monsters? You get more than just having a bunch of powers and hit points. And unfortunately, power creep has crept into the game. I'm going to get to your comments in just a minute because I know you guys are going off. I can't see your comments right now. All right. We're going to get into improvement in things like experience points. The players learn more about the game. Campaign role-playing should be reflected in experience points. When a player thinks up a really good idea, solves a difficult puzzle, has his character talk with the group out of a tight situation, or just finds a novel way around a problem, that's worth experience points. Players should be encouraged to use their brains and get involved. In other words, there's a difference between I walk in the room and make a perception check, what do I see, versus I take my 10-foot pole and lift up the tapestry on the wall, I poke the small box off of the dresser, I move the bed aside and see what's underneath the bed. I pull the carpet back slowly with a hook and ensure that anything under the carpet doesn't spring up at us. Right? It's getting involved, solving a difficult puzzle, has his character talk the group out of a tight situation, finds a novel way around a problem. Hey, let's pretend like we have shackles on us and hide inside of the group of people who are chained up getting into the lair of the enemy. Oh, instead of rolling initiative? Sure. Right? Then we'll get it. What, story goals? Wait, what? Is this milestone? Rescue the prince. Drive away a band of marauding orcs. You hear what it says, drive away. Cleanse the haunted castle. Find the assassin of the late queen. Recover the lost G-Wiz wand to save the world. These are all story goals. And you got experience points for those. Now you had a number. Hey, if you rescue the prince, drive away the marauding orcs, cleanse the haunted castle, maybe you get 5,000 for each one of these, or 1,000 experience points, or whatever. Right? You set it up. Sometimes the DM might not have a clear idea of what the goal of a particular adventure is. In such a case, the players can sometimes provide the goal, sandbox, right? Or at least a clue. Listen to what they think they are supposed to do and what they want to do. These can then become the goal of the adventure. Again, assign experience points based on difficulty if they accomplish this. Hey, you're going through a sandbox and the PCs come across the lizard folk, and the lizard folk have dammed up a river, but there are, I don't know, crocodile people that are trying to take down the dam that the lizard folk have blocked up this river in the swampy area, and the player characters go, we should help them out because they can help us out. And you as the game master went, damn, I just rolled that as a random encounter. Well, let's make that a goal, and guess what? Let's award experience points for that. But there's something even bigger in here. Group awards, something even bigger. Let me get to your comments here, because I apologize for missing out on those, because you guys are the the co-hosts here. Dude, 1995 wasn't that long ago in D&D terms. Yeah, me either, because I'm old. I'm old, yeah. Oh shit, did I miss that? Fuck! I've so apologized for that. We have a super chat. I really appreciate that. So, Agile Monk says, I really appreciate it. Your channel, perspective and wisdom. I've quietly followed your channel for about a year now. Blessings to you and yours. What? Blessings to you. Thank you so. First of all, your time and attention is valuable, and like all of you old heads that have been in with this channel, I really appreciate your time and attention, and the fact that you have a super chat. I really appreciate that, guys. Thank you, Agile Monk. The fact that you've been in a meditative state in the background, and I did not know of your existence. Maybe I felt your presence from long ago, far away. So I really appreciate you pointing that out. And again, I apologize for not highlighting your comment early enough. So hey, thank you very much, and thank you for the blessings as well. We could all use that. So if you don't mind, I'd like to give that to everyone else. Thank you. Oh man, I really appreciate that. Shai says you should reward the characters by having them visibly transform into more awesome warriors the instant they accumulate the required number of XP. That's not exactly the OSR way, but sure. You're funny. Well, my wife had to hit me over the head with a frying pan when we first met. Does that count? Hey, if you saw birds and stars and your head like formed to the shape of the frying pan, she did a good thing. Apologies for the typos. Oh, don't you ever apologize, ever. Fun. The goal of D&D is to get TPK'd on level 1 by a cat. You guys tell me how to pronounce this. Is it a catoblepus or catoblepus? I think it's catoblepus, but whatever. Oh man, catoblepus. Shit, I don't know how to pronounce that damn thing. That's Angel says, see, I've always awarded XP for surviving encounters. In fact, I give more XP for avoiding combat than killing monsters. Oh, we're going to get into it, because not only are you right, the rest of us have always been wrong. We'll get into it. Yeah, it goes on to say, oh, I hate the stop and rest. Yeah. DBJ needs more monitors. To be honest with you, where my hutch is, I'm actually considering getting more monitors, because you can get really cheap, like 20-incher screens, so I can get them on the side. Because yeah, you're right. I have, when I open up my windows, it makes my restream go away. I use restream because I'm a Luddite. I'm an old man. Resurrection, yeah, a good way to deal with that one. You find a body to resurrect your PC in his case, an elven male prostitute. It's funny. Elven male. I rolled randomly, right? Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I know. Paquette says these story goals are excellent examples of resolving external stakes. Yep. Michael Arndt's model of satisfying stories is a good resource. Internal, external, and philosophical goals. I love that. I love that Thank you very much for putting that. Internal, external, and philosophical goals. Mm-mm-mm. That's awesome. Shai says, damn, I always wanted to send your super chat, but you need a credit card and I don't have one. No, 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 no. Don't you, you know who you are if you've been part of this channel for as long as you've been, and the attention you give it. So don't, like Agile Monk and the rest of you guys, I would appreciate it, but it's not necessary. Maybe give me 3 years when I get to my retirement point, and maybe I will have to encourage support in other manners. But at this particular time, Agile Monk says, well, I've been playing for 50 years, DMing for 48, so I hear the age thing. Yeah, take a look at the grays. Yeah, I'm in my mid-50s. I'll be 54 by the end of the year. So funny. One of my earliest experiences was with my players persuading the monsters to enjoy some ale with the party instead of fighting. Yeah. Og Gnal Ganesh became a regular thing afterwards. Yeah. That was drink more beer in their tongue. That's awesome. That's amazing. So allow me the opportunity to read to you a thing that has existed for 30 years that the Mandela effect has erased. Erased. Here we go. This deals with experience points and monsters. So here we go. All characters earn experience points for victory over their foes. Okay. We've seen monster books where it tells you what the experience points is, so I get that. But maybe I'm new to the game, so what else does it say? There are 2 important things to bear in mind here. First, this award applies only to foes or enemies of the player characters. The monster or NPC must present a real threat. Now, understand, it must present a real threat. Characters never, let me highlight the word never receive experience points for the defeat of non-hostile creatures. Rabbits, cattle, deer, friendly unicorns. Or NPCs, like innkeepers, beggars, and peasants. Second, no experience is earned for situations in which the PCs have an overwhelming advantage over their foes. So we know this is a seasonal thing. We know where DMs get upset when the players trounce all of their enemies. If it was that easy, they don't get anything. There is no milestone. There is no earning anything. Great. When players, okay, let me be more specific. We know players that like to min-max their character. We know players that are power gamers, some of them. We know players that want to mathematically or narratively or through force of personality have an easy win button. They press the button and they win. I use my feats and I win. I cast a spell and I win. My character creation, I win. Technically, the character that has no challenge against the enemy doesn't gain any experience for doing so. So if 3 players are playing and one of them is a power gamer and is easily able to dish out 150 hit points at a time and has an armor class that's so high that they can never, there really is no die roll except a 20 for them to be injured, but the other 2 players are very vulnerable, the more powerful player gets nothing. That's a written rule. So yeah, you can, if you start the power game, you actually earn less than those who are surviving by the skin of their teeth. But we're not done. We're not done. Here's a perfect example. A 7th level character who needs 1 more experience point to advance in level can't just gather his friends together and hunt down a single orc. That orc wouldn't stand a chance, so the player was never at any particular risk. If the same character had gone off on his own, thus risking ambush at the hands of a band of orcs, the DM could rule the character had earned the experience. That means going around randomly hunting down monsters to artificially achieve a goal. Hey, let's finish cleaning out the dungeon, right? Hey, we're 8th level. Let's just walk around and finish cleaning out the 3rd level of the dungeon. You don't gain anything. All right, here's another one. The DM must decide what constitutes a significant risk to the players. Often it is sufficient if the players think they are in danger, even when they are not. This is gonna blow your mind. Their own paranoia increases the risk and enhances the learning experience. Thus, if the party runs into a band of 5 kobolds and becomes convinced that there are 50 more around the next corner, the imagined risk becomes real for them. In such a case, an experience reward might be appropriate. Let me repeat that. Their own paranoia increases the risk and enhances the learning experience. If the party runs into a band of 5 and becomes convinced that there are 50 more around the corner, the imagined risk becomes real for them. The imagined risk becomes real. What? You mean you get experience points for something you haven't even seen yet? Because the players are so immersed that they're like, oh, we found a band of we found 5 orc scouts. There must be a war band nearby. We've got to be careful. Hey, let's be sneaky and sneak around the war band so we're not caught. And you just rolled a random encounter and didn't intend to have a war band. Of course, you could make a quantum ogre and make that war band real, right? But if the players perceive it, now mind you, could players pretend? Sure, but maybe they didn't know this rule. And maybe today, right now, there are players out there that with the Mandela effect, the over-canonizing of a canon that didn't exist, well, we only get experience points for what's out there. There must be 50 nearby, right? Because we saw 5. I don't know. The characters must be victorious over the creature. Okay, we get that. Which is not necessarily synonymous with killing it. Said 30 years ago. 29, whatever. Victory can take many forms. Slaying the enemy is obviously victory. Accepting surrender is victory. Routing the enemy is victory. Pressuring the enemy to leave a particular neck of the woods because things are getting too hot is a kind of victory. Oh, what? A creature needn't die for the character to score a victory? Question mark? Exclamation point? Asterisk? Nope. If the player characters ingeniously persuade the dragon to leave the village alone, this is as much, if not more, a victory as chopping the beast into dragon burgers. And yes, they put dragon burgers in here. Yes, they did. And they give you an example. Del, Sonora, and Wrath, along with their henchmen, have been hired to drive the orcs out of Waynwood Copse. After some scouting, they spring several ambushes on orc raiding parties. By the 3rd scattering defeat, the orcs of Waynwood decide they've had enough. Leaving their village, they cross the range of hills that mark the boundary of the land, head off for easier pickings elsewhere. Okay. Although Del Sonora and Wrath have caused the orc village of 234 to leave, they only get the experience for overcoming 35 they bested in ambushes. Although they did succeed in driving off the others, they did not face them and were thus not exposed to potential risk. Even if they had raided the orc village, the DM should only give them experience for those orcs they directly faced. If in the village they routed the guards, persuaded them, caused them to run again, they would only receive experience for the guards once during the course of the battle. Once beaten, the guards pose no significant threat to the party. However, Wrath and Del Sonora have accomplished their mission of driving out the orcs, making them eligible for a reward for accomplishing the story goal. And then it talks about awarding points and experience point values and things like that. So I'm going to highlight this I'm going to highlight this part. You guys can cut and paste this, whatever the hell you want to do. Here we go. And get back to what you guys have to say. Come on. Mandela effect. Here we go. Come on. A donation fund to make it an extra awesome physical copy of Obsidian Star would certainly be a thing, though. Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about doing that next week. Yeah, Death Angel. I love that. No reward for murder hobos. Nope. Flip side, make enemies. There's levels in it for you. Pendragon leverages that. Yeah, they sure do. We're going to talk about hex crawling is not randomly walking. It is throwing a stone into a pond. Hex crawling. Every time you move to a new hex, you are throwing another stone in a pond, and the ripples creating enemies and adversaries should be rippling everywhere. Shadow says, I think a lot of that mentality comes from video games. And gee, look where WotC is headed with their latest hires. Yeah, we don't want tabletop WoW. Yeah, just video gaming. Just keep pressing the hit button and you're done. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I love video games, but they're not the same and shouldn't be. I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. I love the electronic tools that we get for role playing, but we don't want them video games. Yeah. Was rewarding XP for role playing ever only a good thing? Let me see. Here we go. Here's the experience points values, and then after that, it talks about. So, by the way, this table here, the table is a modifier for awarding experience, and you come up with a number, and then the hit dice values against those creatures increased or decreased the experience value. So these were abilities that monsters had, like whether they were very intelligent or had a breath weapon, or blood drain or energy drain. If you remember old energy drain, which took levels from you, it actually has a +3 modifier to experience, and then it would just multiply what you receive. And it goes into some math and things like that. It's here, and the role-playing part. And this talks about individual experience, and essentially, instead of giving the group one big number and splitting amongst them equally, it was about individual things. So here we go. Individual experience points, this was optional, are given for things a player does or things he has his character do. Intelligent play is worth experience. Good role-playing is worth experience. Actions that fit the group style are worth experience. Although some of these awards are tied to abilities, giving out these experience points is purely a discretionary act. And I wish it wasn't optional, but yeah. These awards are normally given at the end of a session, but this isn't a hard and fast rule. The DM can award individual experience points anytime he feels appropriate. And there's 2 categories. First are awards all players can earn regardless of class, and after these awards are awards characters can earn with their character group and class. And so if we go down here, common awards. Player has a clever idea. Player has an idea that saves the party. Player role plays his character well. Player encourages others to participate, defeating a creature in single combat. Now, player encourages others to participate. In other words, stop stealing the spotlight. Stop stepping on other people's toes. Hey, yes, I understand somehow your character has a better or similar benefit to pick the lock, but let the other player pick the lock. Tell them, hey, I'll guard you while you pick the lock, instead of you stepping forward because you want to grab the dice and roll, right? And then there's individual class awards, and it talks about like if you were a priest, Per successful use of granted power, spells cast to further your ethos, making a scroll or potion, making a permanent magic item. And same thing for wizards, spells cast to overcome foes or problems, spells successfully researched, making a potion or scroll, making a permanent magic item. Rogues, per successful use of special ability, per gold piece of value of treasure obtained. Creatures defeated for if you were bard. Remember, bards were a multi-class feature. And it talks about when to award them. And here we go. Despite the risk, it isn't always practical to award experience points immediately. If the player characters are still in the heart of a dungeon when the gaming session ends, wait to award the points until they return to the surface. The DM can rule that characters receive experience only when they have the opportunity to rest and tell others of their exploits. This means that characters collect experience when they return to their homes, stop at an inn, or the like. Since experience is, in part, increased confidence and comprehension of their abilities and events, the retelling of the tale boosts the ego of the characters, and this translates into experience. I like it. Talks about the effects of experience. We get into training. In a way, the adventure has been training them as well. And then their training rule, and there are some things that characters can't be trained on. Right? I talk about that, and rate of advancement, how fast you would like players to go, fast or slow, and this was even back then. And then we get into combat. So yes. Let me go back up to that one quote here that has been, for some reason, the Mandela effect has completely erased this out of 30 years of gaming. But yeah, I know I'm moving very quickly here, and then we'll go back into the comments, and then we'll get out of here. Move this down right here. The character must be victorious over the creature, which is not necessarily synonymous with killing it. Victory can take many forms. Slaying the enemy is obviously victory. Accepting surrender is victory. Routing the enemy is victory. Pressuring the enemy to leave a particular neck of the woods because things are getting too hot is a kind of victory. A creature needn't die for the characters to score a victory. If the player characters ingenuously persuade the dragon to leave the village alone, this is as much, if not more, a victory as chopping the beast into dragon burgers. Here we go. And Spheres of Intrigue, I think, allows players to set aside a certain amount of money to be able to pull a prepared strategy for dealing with an encounter. Rewarding XP for paranoia is brilliant. Yeah, it's awarding XP for the danger they think is going to be ahead of them, and they're convinced that danger is ahead of them. People's statues turned into Medusa. If they believe there is a look in its eyes, I turn to stone creature within this location, whether it's there or not, and their efforts to deal with such a thing, it is possible to reward them, is actually encouraged to reward them for their paranoia, for them preparing themselves for such a thing. And awesome. Pendragon. I don't have the game, but I remember playing Pendragon. I wonder, could do a review of these older games. Doing a hack of Pendragon. Okay. You make rivals, strive to become the very best, regularly deal with magical creatures that could easily kill you toward the land. I like that. Shadow says, what about leveling up in session or after? I'm not against the leveling up during like a rest, meaning like a campfire or the next frontier town. I think what they're trying to say is, like, again, it shouldn't be an easy button. it should be a reflection of the events that happened. So you could have a around the campfire monologue, soliloquy, reflection, meditative storytelling event, and maybe that's the end of the gaming session until they close, and the next game is them closing up the campfire and leaving. I would allow that. Yeah, and so since you only earn XP from spending money, you typically only level in settlements. And remember, it I think the term spending gold for experience, has been misread and mislabeled. In the OSR, it is the act of acquiring, meaning we didn't have to fight the monsters, because remember, fighting monsters was dangerous. We returned those goods and valuables, historical elements, things that aren't necessarily gold but valuable, back to the civilization, or we stayed where we were and built the settlement at the location of the crypt, and we got rid of the evil spirits that were in the crypt, and we kicked out the interlopers that were using it as the forward base of operations for them to attack the human lands. We've cleaned it out. We can now resurrect this place as a historical place for the good of the people. And oh, by the way, goodly people, here's your gold back to the community. You are no longer poor any longer, right? It is uh, maybe placing someone who is of noble birth back. Maybe they were living as a farmer or harvester or something, and the gold was allowing them to regain their former glory, or the players were able to use the gold to draw sages and carpenters and architects and cartographers to the region. So it wasn't just, hey, I got a sack of gold, can I get experience? It was using it to further build the world and maybe even retire. Oh, thank you, Bear. Thank you, Bear. Yeah, be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you so much. Paquette says, okay, XP from storytelling with a bit of abstraction is a great framework, honestly. Yeah. Having to spend the gold to get the XP, doesn't that also have to do with how you have to accumulate followers and build a castle to progress in old school D&D? Yeah. Oh yes, there were, when characters got between 8th to like 11th level, based on your character class, this was the point at which your character was going to air quotes retire. And so you would use that gold because that gold would go to your followers and henchmen and retainers, and I can't remember, there's 5 of them. Followers, henchmen, retainers, 2 more. You guys figure it out. I'm not going to look it up. But yes, they were there to excavate, to learn, to become bodyguards, to protect the valuables that you got out of the dungeon. Because remember, the game wasn't really about you, it was about your legacy. So your fighter, as they gain levels, also had henchmen that you could also play them as well. So the game kept going in a cycle. So your 12th level fighter, you may stop playing that character because one of your henchmen is 4th level, and you decided to make that henchman or follower a full character. You gave them a name. They now have a backstory, with your first character, fighter, being part of their backstory. Maybe they even gained a magic item or a special boon given to them by the higher level fighter, and now you're playing 4th level, and now we're going back down on levels again, and the cycle goes up. You start gaining levels, you retire, and you become one of the other characters. Now, the game did progress past, I'm going to pick 10th level. It went up to 20th level. When it got to that point, you were no longer walking the earth. You were extraplanar superheroes. You were solving issues about saving the multiverse. you were traveling to other realms and worlds. It was Planescape at the time. So if you were 17th level, you were not doing mortal things. You were, as a wizard, traveling to other planes of existence. As a fighter, you were leading giant armies, um, at, at the head of an army of 1,000 or more. So it was less about your individual successes. Instead, your character was called to action, and then you changed the direction of nations. So while you could absolutely, and they had rules for adventuring past 10th level, let's say, wizards got more powerful. Because wizards, remember, as wizards got more powerful, in the beginning they were very weak, but then they ramped up very, very quickly at the end. And that ramp up allowed them to, we no longer have to travel leagues on foot. We can just teleport there. We can open up a portal into the plane of concordant opposition, or what has been known as sigil or sigil. You had clerics that could create food and water, and back at this time, creating food and water was a very high level spell, because when you had all that gold, you had to carry your food and rations with you as well. Where did that go? Did you drop your food to carry the gold? Well, at a certain point, you didn't need it any longer, and that was very high level play. So gold into XP. I'm not suggesting that you must turn gold into experience points, but if you take a look at some indie games, what you will realize is that you reward the actions you want to see from your players. If you were only rewarding players killing monsters, guess what? Players will only acquire those things to kill monsters. And unfortunately, in present Fantasy D20, players only have tools to kill monsters. Back in the day, players were more creative in how they circumvented challenges. They were using morale to scare off or drive off monsters. They would use bribery and special creative endeavors to ensure that they did not get into lethal combat, because they didn't get anything out of it. You really didn't get that much experience points for killing monsters. Not as much as you could get for gold. Wait, so you mean, okay, let's weigh this here. So if I fight 4 giants, I get 1,000 experience points for each one. But 1 gold gem can give me 10,000 gold experience? Why risk my life fighting giants when I can just get the gemstone? Now, maybe you can't avoid the giants, but we don't have to fight them. Or we can fight in a tactical or strategic manner in which benefits us. Meaning, maybe the fastest, sneakiest characters drive the giants away, and the fighter and ranger and rogue start doing a strategic retreat, while the wizard and 3 henchmen go in and steal the goods, sneak it away, and the PCs are like, hey, the wizard shot off a magic missile flare. Great. We can get out of the combat. Let's stop running and fighting and shooting them. Let's just run. We don't need to even finish this. Again, strange bedfellows. What do you do in Dark Sun? Turn shards of clay and bone into XP? Yeah. Although experience points could be gained for finding an oasis or water sources. I know you're joking. Making weapons out of bones, like you said, and clay and obsidian and stuff. Buying, trading, selling that stuff to the enemy could be cool. I would dare say saving context is everything. Maybe that should be the title of tomorrow's thing. Yeah, we'll talk about context. So let's say in Dark Sun you come across a band of cannibalistic halflings, and they are half their group is stuck in quicksand and you save them out of the quicksand. That is an experience point interaction for the players to gain experience, because these potential enemies, yep, these potential enemies are technically supplanted. You dealt with them. As a matter of fact, the definition of experience is not combat. The definition of experience is experience, having an experience that happens when we deal with enemies or evil creatures or what have you. That's a real thing. And when the players realize that, oh, if we can parlay, and mind you, even the non-combat situations that solve a problem, they're not permanent. Just because you parlay, trick, convince, threaten, bribe, come on, there's some other words that we can use, contextual words, rescue, tell stories to, trade information, guide with, arm wrestle, who can throw the farthest stone, first one to draw blood wins, archery contests, name calling, poetry. Come on, you guys. There's so many ways to defeat and interact with NPCs and monsters, adversaries, enemies, and they're not permanent. Sure, you could throw small rocks at the giants and then run away. Yes, temporarily that gets the giants maybe away from the cavern. You go into the cavern, steal the things, and leave. But those giants still exist. They know who you are and what you are. Maybe they're on the lookout for you. Maybe there are winter wolves that they have up in the higher mountain ranges because it's so cold up there, and they send yes, even the serving, yes, even the serving wenches. And just to be clear, serving wenches come in all genders. Some of them even shift their genders depending on where you are in Planescape. And yes, having fun banging them all. Yeah, the serving wenches like, my gender is fluid, and the PC's like, I don't care. Is there a hole? Yeah. How's your hole? Family. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for allowing me to talk about this. We're going to have some fun, go on some rants. I appreciate you, Agile Monk, and everyone else. Halfling tossing. Yeah. Dwarves are like, it's my turn. Come here, halfling. Wedgie. No! Toss him. But the point is that we can have some comedic fun, and this is weird to say, in real life, a person who has never been in real combat understands that even my armchair analysis of real combat understands that win scenarios are almost never 50-50. You never want them to be 50-50. Each side tries to come to the war with their strategic and tactical overwhelming odds. You never want to fight somebody on equal ground. So, more often than not, it's not about killing the enemy, it is about routing the enemy. Oh, we need that land, we need that high point, we need that valley, we need those resources. We need to get the enemy away from there so we can collect those resources. That's it. They have prisoners. We need to rescue the prisoners. That's it. It's a context. Now, is there murder killing going on? Of course there is. Of course. Is that the purpose of going into the dungeon and adventure? No. Sometimes the purpose of going into the dungeon is maybe it really wasn't supposed to be a dungeon. Maybe it was a grove of trees with a spring nearby, and carved into the hillside was a place which was meant to be a religious retreat for those that the um, worshipped the three gods of the sun, the stars, and light, or what have you. And unfortunately, it was desecrated. Evil spirits lurk around it. People with ill intent live there and such. And the player characters go in, defeat them all, scatter them to the winds, cut all the weeds away, and guess what's left? Hey, humanity, we have a pathway and it's safe here. And oh, by the way, I am Fightor. I will establish a fort on the border of this location to keep the enemy away and warn them to get them away. Once I get to a certain level, maybe some of my henchmen will go on adventures, but I will reside back in the castle. So, the OSR, gold for experience points, greedy? Not necessarily. It was gathering valuables and value to return back to humanity so that in a goodly way, they were trying to expand. Now, mind you, we can get it later. What we'll do is this week, we'll get into argument of colonialism, because there is a bit of that. Like, wait a minute, why is humanity just good and goblinoids are just evil? And coming to terms with the OSR, please don't move my cheese. The monster manual says they're lawful evil, chaotic evil, neutral evil. Therefore, it doesn't hurt us to kill them, versus the modern era where, because they are a player character option, they are given more nuance. And where does that nuance come from? And how do we reconcile the evil hordes are evil, therefore it's not, there is no ethical or moral quandary, you just murder kill them, versus yeah, that's actually a good point, and a point I was kind of getting circling around to, like, goodly, something nobody was in antiquity. Yeah, everybody was the bad guy at some point, no matter how badly we were treated. And all of us can go back to a period in history where the people we aligned with, whether it is whatever faction, whether it's religious or ethnic or regional or something like that. Excuse me. We can all go back in time and find a place in time where our people, however you define our people in multiple different ways, are at their low point, and others were taking our people down, and we rose up. And guess what? The same can be done for when our people were the bad guys. As a person of color, hey, I can raise my fist and go, you know what? Friggin' slavery United States is horrible, and our people were treated badly. Absolute positively, all that is true. Jim Crow laws and all that bullshit. But we didn't get here just by people running around and snatching us up. There were warlords in Africa that kicked my people out so that they could get here in the first place. We were the bad guys at a certain point. So everybody was the bad guy. Technically, everybody was the good guy. So depending on how you measure time and who you assign your identity to, whether it's, like I said, ethnic or cultural or regional or whatever. Yep, every faction defeated another one throughout history. Hell yeah. I don't know. We can argue about the colonialism. Maybe it's wording and not the action, or we can argue about the action versus the wording. Yes, there's not necessarily just colonialism. In times of scarcity, yeah, people ain't going to take all the money so they can distribute it for the good of humanity. When there's scarcity, people get pretty ruthless. Hey, if there's one potato and there's 5 people, yeah. I mean, antiquity, seriously, ancient times, I think there was some real life murder hoboing going on. For reals. There was genocidal acts happened in ancient times. We could talk about that later on as well. Maybe next week or the week after. Sorry about that. So anyway, guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. Thank you very much for letting me rant a bit in this. I'm no, you know what? I'm not going to take the screen away. I'll leave it right here for at the very end for those who feel that experience points is about killing monsters. No, there isn't. So at the very end of the show, we can see here that the explanation of such a thing. Um, yeah, yep. Oh, there certainly was. If you, for those of you that are fans of Dan Carlin's hardcore history, he goes. There's a series he talks about. Um, oh, about genocide. But yeah, Dan Carlin's hardcore history. He goes into that how these different cultures throughout time had basically it was if you didn't completely annihilate your enemy down to the women and children, they would grow to become your enemies later. These people you took over weren't force multipliers; they were drains on your economy, and so throughout time, it wasn't until later when hunting and gathering we got more settled, where you actually needed people like that. But yeah, you never heard of Dan Carlin's hardcore history? Oh, don't make me do it. Dan Carlin's hardcore history. Um, yeah, let me share this out. Let's replace this with this one. This is an image you'll see. It's got a YouTube channel. It's a Dan Carlin's hardcore history are very long. They go from like an hour to 5 hours long. So yeah, it's a real thing. Very very intelligent individual, by the way. Um, excellent show, excellent show. But anyway, Dan Carlin's hardcore history. Thank you very much for taking that. I will replace this back with this part here. The end of the show, guys. Thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for letting me for allowing me to be slightly enlightening. You guys helped out a lot in that. So anyway, guys, have a great day. Thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. Also, we are going to continue our talk about unintended consequences of changing things, whether the game changed it or the community, us in the tabletop role-playing community, changed it. But the unintended consequences of making yep, this week in DBJ got off to a very good start. Well, thank you very much. We will continue with all kinds of stuff. What the hell is the OSR? What the hell is with the random tables and other weird contexts that happened? What's with the OSR and this desire for these things? Why the low hit points? Huh? What's that about? We'll talk about it. So anyway, guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. Have a great day. Thank you for spending your valuable time. I really appreciate you. That was really weird. Being here. Guys, have a great one. I'll see you later. Peace and tranquility. Bye.